So today we will be looking at few topics around detecting indicators and also looking at some case studies through simulations. Okay. Just to recap what we have covered so far, try understand the kind of malware that we have, how to understand whether the malware is a virus, worms, and so on. Try understand some of the case studies, looking at case studies to understand why APT type of attacks are more popular these days, what type of characteristics they have, how they can bypass IDS, and what kind of impact, adverse impact they can create. Yeah, so we have to try to look at some of the case studies and get a sense out of it. We also look at around the solutions in terms of how you apply encryptions, what is integrity, and so on. Also look at some understanding assets, cyber physical assets, how you derive critical assets, critical paths in the system. You know, how do you model attacks, understand its impact on the physical systems, and so on. Now today we will be looking, before I get into this, are there any questions? What we have gone so far? Okay, so what we will be looking today is indicators of compromise, right? Now, while we are discussing this, we are also kind of try understand how this particular topic or technology is different in terms of applying in IT versus OT. Yeah. What are the challenges in OT that are not there in IT system? So indicators of compromise, we call it IOC, right? Indicator of compromise, simply when a system is under attack, if there's a malware in the system, and so on, we would like to understand what are the indicators that can help us determine that system is compromised, right? When systems start misbehaving, the pattern seems to be unusual or deviated from the original or normal scenario, it seems to be something is not right. Yeah? The kind of quantities or the magnitudes we should be receiving seems to be too low, too high, or receiving too many requests. Yeah? Or some in the system, system files have been corrupted or moved from some other locations and things like that. In IT system, indicator of compromise mostly what can go wrong. If someone is attacking your IT system, mostly it's about hacking a device or stealing the data. Now hacking the device, mostly it's a workstation, yeah? Or it could be a server. Workstation generally doesn't have any data out of it, but the whole point of getting into workstation is it possible to get into the system through one of the workstations, right? So as we discussed, like attackers always find easiest way to get into the system. Yeah, if there's a server, we understand the server might have some level of security, which is not easy to crack. So you need to be a bit technical in order to get into this. On the other hand, if there are people who are not cybersecurity expert or don't really understand cybersecurity, we can send them emails, messages, you know, some kind of super phishing and asking them to click on links and things like that. So the whole point is they want to inject a malware in their system. This will help them to get into the system. So even if you have a system which is technically really secure and your people are not trained, you still have high risk that attacker can get into system through that. So in IT system, mostly we are talking about data breaches. Yeah? It's all about you are collecting data, sending data over the network. Your data could be compromised, could be So there are a couple of attacks like impersonation, eavesdropping, and so on. But mostly it's about the data, right? So when we say data, how could it happen? Maybe the way you are storing your data. So companies generally store data in their servers or data centers. And in order to access your, again, in what format you are storing the data. Earlier it used to be stored in a plain text, but now people are thinking, what if I store it in encrypted form rather than normal form? So even if my data is leaked, still in encrypted form. No one can decrypt it unless they have the key. One of the reasons of data breach is unauthorized access. What is unauthorized access? Right, without permission. Someone who doesn't have permission for access right, access that data in some way. Now sometimes attackers copy the data, and sometimes they steal the data. So if there's any modification over data, possibly you will get one of the compromise, one of the indicators says data has been changed, and so on. But sometimes they just copy the data, which is a passive attack. And it's hard to understand whether data is compromised or not. Yeah. Now, in an IT enterprise, what are the different ways? Let's say access. Have you studied access control? So, what are the different ways or models through that we can design a system for users to access different resources? So basically, we had 4 broad models, the number of models. I'll just talk about 4 main models. One of them, just trying to understand how do we fix this unauthorized access. One thing is you just encrypt everything. Whoever holds the key should be able to decrypt it. Yeah, even if people having access to the encrypted data, they can't decrypt it. Right? But then again, if we are talking about very large data, encryption and decryption is all about costing and time. Yeah. And sometimes we also want to protect resources, not just data. Yeah, I want someone out of you, maybe 1 or 2 and 3 people should be able to access this device, for example, or this room, for example. Right? So in that sense, we need to restrict access of individual. Or I can give access to the group. Yeah? Student from computer science should be able to have access to this lab. Student from mechanical, they can't get into this. Right? So sometimes we also think about permissions in a group level. And now the 4 model I'm talking about, the very first is called discretionary access control, which is the very basic model, which says, as its name says, it's the discretion of the owner. If I have a laptop, I have a device, I will decide who will access it. Yeah? If you're my friend, I might give you the access. So it's completely up to me to decide who will have access to on this resource. Right? And generally, it's a very simplistic thing. Generally, we don't really practice this in an organization. It's an individual thing very, yeah. Second comes mandatory access control. Now, mandatory access control says for some resources, you can customize it, you can access it, but for some resources, you are forced to do something. For example, your operating system. There are system files. Sometimes it doesn't allow you to copy the file or move that file. If you go to program files and so on, it will not allow you to make changes to those files. Right? And things like that. So you have a user space, you have a system space there. System space, all the system files, installation, everything. By user space, you can add it file, create file, whatever. Right? So mandatory access control decide the user cannot access this, only the system can access it. Yeah? You can create different user accounts who can access this device, but their own individual accounts, own their individual space. So if you're logging in a device through different account, you won't have access to certain resources or certain files, for example. Yeah. The third type is called role-based access control. So let's say let's take example of this university. We have different people of different roles. You got director of the institute, you have academic dean, dean affairs, maybe dean R&D, professors, associate professors, assistant professors, postdoc, PhD, MTech, BTech, and so on. Yeah. So these are the user roles, and I can decide based on the user roles who can access individual resources in what capacity. Yeah. When I say individual roles, I can give one specific role to a group of users. Right? If you belong to computer science faculty, if you are a professor, you might have access to something. Students might not have access to those things. Right? Anyone joins new, if there's a new faculty joins, that belongs to that group. So he automatically got those rights as a professor. If a new student comes in, automatically got rights as a student. Right? So we have defined the boundary in terms of roles. And as long as people comes and join groups, they have these exactly same rights as the other people have in the group. Right? And the last one is called attribute-based access control. Now, one of the problem with, so what is the problem in role-based access control? When there's no problem, but then what are the challenges? What happens in an enterprise, generally people have multiple roles. Yeah? There's a professor who is also a dean, maybe. Right? Sometimes people belongs to different departments. Maybe they're teaching computer science, but they're also teaching electrical, or they're head of computer center, and so on. Yes? Students might be, somebody is also kind of representing some student bodies, student groups, they're head of XYZ. So sometimes people, similarly in the companies, in corporate world, people have, so companies have different projects. A person who is, let's say, program lead in one project might be in a different role in another project. Right? Let's say somebody is security officer, but there's a project on cybersecurity, and they say, oh, you head it, you lead it. So that person becomes the lead of that project. So in one role, he's the lead of the project, but on the other hand, he's also a security officer. Now, sometimes when people have multiple roles, they have extra permissions. So you have all the rights as you are head of project. So whatever rights we want to give to as a head of projects, the person has. But he's also security officer, so whatever other roles as a security officer, he has all those roles. Right? Now, sometimes they complement, which is okay as long as it doesn't harm, but sometimes it contradict. Yeah, they might having those resources that they can misuse for their other roles to get the benefit to the other roles. Yeah. Also, when there are limited number of users, role-based system are okay, where people might have multiple roles to play. But when we have very large systems, it becomes difficult. Once the project is finished, what will happen? Then you go back to security officer. You are not anymore lead of the project, right? But what you forget to revoke those rights, person can still access it, isn't it? So in that capacity, we have attributes-based access control, which says rather than think about role, think about the attribute. Right? There's a person. If he is a security officer, you give them an attribute. Does he belong to security side of it? Yes, you give them. Is he administrator? Give extra right? And then you revoke those attributes simply, rather than the whole role, or rather than revoking everything from it. So for you give default rights to everyone, some rights which are kind of common, and as soon as they change different roles, you attach those attributes to them so that they get additional permission. Once the role is done, you take that, simply remove the attribute from the database. Right? For example, did you guys study database? SQL and yeah, so you know how does it work. So you can simply match those things. Right? Where this equals to this. So that condition is true, you person automatically gets right. If you need to revoke, you just need to run one command. Right? And that will solve this rather than setting up or resetting up the whole thing. And you can scale it up as long as you need it. Right. So that's all about IT system. Now how it's different in OT system. So it's a OT system is not just about data. It's about disruption of two physical processes and potential safety hazards. Right? So as we said, even if your data is corrupted, change a bit, it can still work for us, for the physical system, as long as we pass the data to SCADA system, understand how it will behave on the system. If the system is stable, we are fine. Right? So as an attacker, your intention is to disrupt physical processes, not just the data. If you're changing data, if it doesn't make any adverse impact on the system, it's not working for you as an attacker. Your intention is to disrupt it so that device starts stopping or stop working, or maybe you kind of inject malicious data or modify data in such a way it has a direct consequence on the data. Lines become overloaded and things like that. So disruption is one thing. On the other hand, since these systems are critical systems, we talk about the safety of the system. There's a potential safety hazards as well. What somebody trying to control your safety system of cyber physical system. So all the physical systems have their safety unit in this, right? Say in the worst case, if things go wrong, the safety system will be activated. It will cut down, trip down, disconnect it, right? So in worst case, it doesn't have harm on people because the people who are working there. What if there's a fire in a manufacturing unit, or the machine suddenly fell down and so on. And by the way, that always happens, not just from cybersecurity point of view, because of the mistakes, human mistakes and faults, yeah, in big companies and so like manufacturing units, most probably. So sometimes their intention is also kind of harming and exploiting safety hazards. So what are the indicators we can think of in IT system generally? Regular checking of. So generally in IT system, what we do is there's always network security engineer or analyst looking at the packets. Yeah? What packets are coming to the network, going out to the network, what their source address, where they are coming from, which protocol they are working, what the port number, what they are listening. Because sometimes you also wanted to know what data is going out from your network and through which ports. The port numbers will help you to understand what kind of applications or protocol, what kind of applications running in the system that's using protocol X. Yeah, if you see there's a 25 number open, port 25 is open in a system. 25 is connected to which one? Is it TCP? TCP or HTTP, I guess is 80. Yeah. So depending on port number, you can easily understand which protocol it's running, and then what could be the potential application which are based on these protocols. Okay. The other term is called indicator of attack. Indicators of attack help organizations detect and stop threats before they cause damage. On the other hand, indicator of compromise helps organizations understand and mitigate the impact of attack. So as its name, indicator of attack. So what we are essentially try understand based on whatever indicator we have. Yeah, let's say you are able to detect multiple indicators that seems to be unusual or start, they are not as they're supposed to be. Are these indicators giving some hint? What kind of attack it could be, right? So based on those indicators, can you profile the attack? Let's say attacker changed XYZ. Does it look like this is a DOS attack? If attacker did something that you see the indicators ABC has changed, does it look like man in the middle attack, and so on? Yeah. Because once you understand what kind of attack it could be, it becomes much not easier, but in a way you become more powerful to understand what could go wrong. If you see there's a DOS attack on your system, you know what type of DOS attack it could be. Yeah. So you kind of start looking at all the possible things. If you don't know type of attack, it becomes difficult for you to understand what is the intention of the attacker, what they can target exactly. Yeah. So we are trying to detect indicators, but also try to profile the attack. Can I, based on the indicator, can I get a sense what type of attack it could be? If you can get some of this knowledge, even if not perfect, it can help you to mitigate in some way, yeah? Or you better prepare. So it's a evidence-based patterns and anomalies in a system that indicate the presence and occurrence of cyber attack. So indicators, IOCs, malware injections, signatures, vulnerability exploitation, IP addresses, and so on. Indicators of attack, code execution, persistence, stealth, command and control, communication, lateral movement, data exploitation. What is stealth? Stealthy attack. So how these cyber attacks also been kind of evolved over the years. Now for security, again, security is not new, yeah? Security, particularly network security, is there since very long. And we've seen traditional attack like denial of service, man in the middle attack, and so on. And then for those kind of attack, people have created technology, mechanism, intrusion detection system, intrusion prevention system, and so on. So if you are, as an attacker, if you are attacking through any traditional attack, possibly we have ideas in place that will help us flagging things, saying this has changed, these parameters have changed. Seems to be something suspicious, and it can block packets or IP or source and so on. But then there could be steal the attack. Steal the attack in a way, it doesn't go in a way, in one go. So let's say your IDS is checking at payload, and let's say if the data in a packet, so like let's say the size of packet is 1500 bytes. You say the size is more than 1600, I will consider as an malicious packet, for example. Yeah. So what attacker will do, now attacker needs to inject 5000 bytes. What attacker will do, they will create a packet, and they'll keep the limit less than threshold. So the packet size will be less than 1600. So the IDS doesn't discard it, but then they send multiple packets. Now that data sit together. Once they get into the system, it becomes something else, target system, and exploit it. Right? Or sometimes if you are changing, modifying data, as we say, once you even if the data is modified a little bit, we want to pass this to the SCADA system, want to run algorithm, and want it to see whether the system has changed. Does it have any adverse impact or not? Right? Maybe for one packet, it doesn't show any impact. But if you keep modifying your data a little bit every time, might be you come to a point where you see there's an impact on the system, right? So those kind of attacks are called stealthy attack because they are not easy to detect. Even if you are running your algorithm, you see everything seems to be fine. Until suddenly you realize data have been changed a lot, and now this time you see sudden change in the system. Yeah. Attackers are able to attack system because they are smarter than the people who are defending the system. As simple as that. And they know that the solution, the technology, the tools that we have in place, they can't get into this using traditional attacks. So they are also become more smarter. They are developing techniques which can bypass the security system. Yeah. And if they are able to do so, whatever we have is useless. And then we need to think about how you improve those technology, or you build new technology and so on, new tools. Now there's another term is called tactics, techniques and procedure. We call TTPs. TTPs help us understand what could go wrong, what are the different ways through this attacker can target the system, and what their intention, what they can do. So it's a tech test called why, techniques called how they can do it, and then procedures say what this attack about. So why understanding TTPs matter? We are talking about proactive threat detection. Yeah, so we talk about reactive versus proactive. Reactive is just you just wait something bad to happen, and then you react to it. Proactive is kind of planning yourself. You wanted to understand what could go wrong, and you prepare yourself before it hits your system. Improved incident response, which is part of your proactive thing. Enhanced threat hunting, strengthening cyber defense, and help understand adversary mindset, what exactly they are trying to do. This is the example, one of the example. So in order to collect TTPs, most of the time, the way we look at is, look at the security reports, white papers, where people are describing attacks and scenarios and so on. And within those qualitative research, what is qualitative research? What is different when I say qualitative and quantitative? Yeah. So if you have data set, I'm applying algorithm X on data, yeah, collecting data, that's a quantitative research, right? You're playing with numbers, data. Qualitative, where you have more literature-based study, where you read papers, books, blogs, and so on. So what it helps, there's a number of reports, papers, and so on available on different case studies, different attacks that have been targeted in the past, or what researchers think might be can be targeted in the future. You look at all the reports and extract the content. That will help you to understand TTPs. For example, look at this report, which says we believe that compromised company was able, as the file name used in that malicious email attachment is probably able time access _update.exe, and we observed such a file being used to drop the same hyperbro sample as described in Avast blog post. Now from this sentence, we are trying to understand what is the TTP name, what kind of attack it looked like. When somebody is attaching an exe file to it, yeah, and then sending you email, what kind of attack it is? It's example of phishing. Yeah? When someone sends you email attaching exe file or malware, it's a clear example of phishing. So by this sentence, you get a sense TTP is phishing. Element name, whatever is the file name or malware name and so on. Similarly, second sentence says host used with the downloaded hyperbro is different, and DLL used to decode and execute the thumbs.db payload is exactly the same. Now TTP is de-obfuscated. It decode the files. If it is encoding, it's obfuscate. Yeah. TTP element is the name of that file or malware. Similarly, you go down, say third sentence which says this technique is very similar to 3-pronged trident attack reported by Kaspersky researcher. Both thinprobe.exe, intgstat.exe, side loading host were previously used by Lucky Mouse to load hyperbro. So you can see somebody is trying to load DLL files. So it's a DLL side loading, and then you can simply name what those files are. Note, however, that contrary to previous documented hyperpro dropped employing such a trident, the payload here is not Shikata Gani encoded, but XOR encoded with value something. So in a sense, you get that somebody is trying to encode a source obfuscated files element. They are XORing. They're trying to XOR with something. CNC URL of the hyperbro implant used with the Trojanized able desktop installer is this link, while CNC URL used by the one downloaded by the legitimate able desktop is this. So you get a sense this is application layer protocol you are talking about. These are the kind of maybe links. Now you have to also get whether these links are malicious or because if they are part of the document, most probably they are not malicious, because sometimes if those links are malicious, people just name it. If they're giving the exact links, they might not be malicious, but something else. So in this case, it seems to be part of application protocol. Yeah, but maybe unintentionally, something that we don't usually expect somebody to send these files. Yeah. What happens if you try send exe file in your attachment? Have you tried it? Earlier you were able to send it, but now you're not, because you are attaching an exe file. The email systems are now designed in a way they start thinking you are phishing. You're trying to phish somebody, and they will not allow you to attach an exe file unless you compress it. Yeah, create .rar or .zip file, and then you can send it. Earlier we also used to able to download exe file directly. If you need to install a software, there's an exe file, you download it, install it. Now either you see those in the compressed form or you see their installer. Yeah, so you download the installer and then it will download binaries out of it. Okay, so this is the way how you, by looking at a report, now let's think about this is a 100-page report talking about different attacks on a topic. Right? What happened on smart grid in last 10 years? They're describing 10 different attacks in more detail. So this is how you derive TTPs. Try understand what are the different techniques attacker have used, what kind of malware they have used, yeah, and what sort of malicious links and things they have used. So this will help you to gather that information out of it. And when you design your solution, you know what kind of possible or more popular attack that have been targeted in this sector. And you design your solutions to defend these attacks, particularly against these malwares. Yeah. So people are developing these kind of tools, automatic tools as well, where they can read PDF file, they can read your Word file and extract these indicators. Yeah, these TTPs. And once you have a table or a record of what are TTPs and what are the malicious elements, it becomes much easier for you to understand what to focus rather than talking about all types of attacks. Because you don't know what will come, but possibly you can learn what happened in the past. Yeah? If something happened in the past and you're not learning out of it and it repeats itself where you are part of it this time, it's really disappointing, isn't it? Because you know something has happened in the past and you did not prepare yourself. So these kind of techniques really help you to understand what are the case studies available, what sort of incidents happened in the past, what attacker did exactly, what type of attack they performed, what malware they have used, and then making sure we are prepared with those situations. So these are the practice that we generally used in this process. Then you can also look at how an attack has, what are the different resources the attacker can, these attacks have been targeted on. What was the cyber behaviors, whether the data was exploited, whether they send data to control and command C and COC to servers, and so on. Did they compromise users, system admin, and so on. And you also look at times. So let's say time here, say second, minutes, hour, days, and months. Probably I can create this kind of graph to understand what happened in last 10 years, last 5 years. Yeah? What are the resources were targeted and when, and what were the cyber behavior, how the, So this will help understand what are the overlaps, what are the big areas or repeated areas, what are the common attacks, and what is the practice look like. Maybe 2010 attack X was more popular, but then now 2025 we have something else. So how these attack patterns have been changed and evolved over the years. Yeah, so this one kind of graph can help you understand a lot of things. So it says cyber terrain can refer to the broad range of host network segments or other area where adversary may be operating. Example is Linux servers, Linux host, Windows servers, Windows host, Cisco routers, switches, Juniper routers, firewalls, email proxies, voice over IP. What is voice over IP? Yeah. What does it mean? Exactly. Now we don't realize it because there's so many applications now, but when these concepts came, we used to have something called Skype. Yeah, we also have Skype, but I don't know if you use it, Skype. But this was one of the early software. As I said, in order to connect to the internet, there was a dial-up connection. You need to connect your telephone lines to your computer, and you can connect only. Or you have to make calls. The people who are living abroad, they have to use international call, to talk to someone in another country. Then WhatsApp came, say you can use VoIP over IP. You'll connect it to the internet. It's quite cheap compared to your international calls, and that becomes so popular. Yeah, there were security issues at that point in time. There was no end-to-end encryption. But then you came WhatsApp. WhatsApp has changed everything. Yeah. Now people don't use traditional call, it just WhatsApp everything. WhatsApp also said they are using now end-to-end encryption. What does it mean by end-to-end encryption? Yeah, so only the sender and recipient can see. In between, if someone captures it, they can't get the actual content. Now, what happened when I send a message? I send a text to you, let's say. What happened? What is the path? What is the route it follow? Where it goes? Does it come straight from here to there? Or what happened? Which server? Let's talk about text. Forget about WhatsApp at the moment. Let's talk about traditional text message, which is not internet or MMS, it's a SMS. What happened? Okay, so again, depending on, so I got a phone and I type a message to him. Okay, so it doesn't go like this. Obviously, it will follow the network, and right, because your mobile phone doesn't know he's sitting beside me, next to me. The message will still follow everything. So what happens is when you type or send an SMS, SMS follow the path of cellular network, right? So in cellular network, we have something called, so it's always a phone signal is low, yeah? Try connecting to tower. So you move here and there to see your signal strength going up or down. So your message content goes to something called base transceiver station, BTS, those towers, right? So in a region, you might have multiple towers. Let's say in this city, you might have multiple towers of particular service provider. Airtel might have their own tower, airlines might have their own towers, and so on, right? Now that BTS sends those messages to something called base station, BSS, we call them BSS. BSS collect those from all the towers in that region. BSS then send forward it to something called message switching center. Now the role of the switching center is to understand whether messages need to be delivered within this region or it's for outside region. Same provider, another provider, right? Because I might have an Airtel SIM and I'm sending someone who has, let's say, Vodafone. So obviously need to be connect to the other BT, yeah, or Vodafone at the end. So mobile switching center will look into where you want to send, who is the recipient, try search it, what is the location of that particular recipient, forward back to the BSS of that location, BSS send it to the particular BTS, and then BTS deliver to your mobile phone. Yeah. So that's the process generally being followed. It's a long process. Now, a few years back, there were charges to send SMS. I don't know if you remember, but there was charge like 1 rupee, 2 rupees, something like that, per SMS. Yeah. And those telecom companies will getting revenue out of it. But the fact is, they were not investing any extra amount to send you a message. Why? There's something called piggybacking. What is piggybacking? Exactly, yeah. So it's like when you are sending acknowledgement, you are just attaching that message with that. So anyway, they need to send acknowledgement to several control commands and so on within the network. They need to send those commands. So they're attaching your message apart to that, sending it, and then charging you 2 rupees or 1 rupees, whatever. Now, when we have this kind of voice over IP, everything suddenly changed. There's no revenue exactly from it. We don't send messages anymore. Yeah. So technology can change anything that you haven't thought of. Those companies, they were thinking about that SMS will not change and it will be forever. And they were thinking about how they can improve their revenue. People will start using SMS in banks and so on. Now we use OTP, one-time password, and so on. Now those one-time password now follow internet routes, voice over IP, and other things. But traditionally, they were SMS. It comes to your mobile, and you look at okay. Yeah. So these companies are also generating revenue, collaborating with those companies. You can use my SMS service for whatever. Yeah. So the kind of a business model for them, which is gone now. Right. So voice over IP, connecting your device to internet, and that becomes a separate channel. Yeah, in internet you can. But then again, it brings cybersecurity issues. That's why WhatsApp says we will offer end-to-end encryption. Yeah. So that only the sender and recipient can look at the. Why? What's the need of having end-to-end? Who is that nobody? occurs. Okay. So when we say traditional SMS, when your SMS goes to the follow that path, there are operators, telecom operators. They can look at your message. Now, sometime it happens is your mobile is switched off. I sent you a message, but your phone is switched off. What will happen? Stored somewhere. Yeah. So we have something called some registers, home location, no home. They are used for authentication. There's some storage there. I can't remember at this point. So your SMS goes there if it cannot deliver. In every few minutes, an hour, it always try whether this phone is switched on. If there's a path, then it will deliver it. Yeah, so they keep your message for maybe a day or two or something like that, or for a week. If your phone doesn't switch on, it does discard message. Right? But in this case, especially in the cases in the US where US government were forcing companies to get into the system extracting information because they were following certain people who seems to be criminal and XYZ. Right? And the government saying, I need to see their cell phone, their messages, who they are contacting, what they are sending, and so on. And that becomes a legal issue in a way. The company saying, this is our policy, and then we cannot allow you. There was also a case in the US where the US government was trying to crack their iPhone. And there was a huge debate with Apple and FBI. It becomes kind of illegal. They were asking the key. So there's always a backdoor key. Yeah, they can always get into your phone and get to see what you're doing. So the Apple was saying we have a policy in place and we cannot allow anyone else apart from the owner of the device to look at this. Anyway, I guess the US government figured it out. They cracked it in some way, but Apple did not give them key. So that's one of the reasons. End-to-end encryption, we don't want that hassle. We're just simply saying message is encrypted, only the recipient and sender can see it. Now this is also helping in adversaries, attackers, to send messages which cannot be intercepted. Yeah, so it's kind of a headache for the government, not the other way. Okay, let's talk about this and then we'll have a break. Have you heard this cyber kill chain? So the cyber kill chain is a model that breaks down cyber attack into stages to help identify and stop it. Now, when something happened to us, we don't know how it's happened. So there are frameworks that came into the picture. People have started working towards it, saying, like the virus, any attack has its stages. And if we are able to understand these stages well, we might stop the attack sooner than the later. Yeah? So it's a security framework that helps organizations recognize, intercept, and prevent attacks. So it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 phases. The very first phase is reconnaissance, which simply says the attack do its research, identify what infrastructure it wants to target, how they are connected, and then decide which device or system or process it needs to target. So more or less planning. Yeah? Once you decide a target, what do? You weaponizing it. Weaponization. Saying pairing remote access malware with exploit into deliverable payloads. So you weaponize it. You load the weapon with it. Yeah? So depending on how you want to exploit it, that particular malware could be loaded. Then the delivery. Since you already selected the target, you already have particular malware, you just deliver it to the right place. Transmission of weapon to target, maybe email attachment, website, depending on what type of attack we are doing, USB drives. Once you deliver, the next phase is exploitation. Now this These steps might vary in terms of time from attack to attack. Some attacks might be executing immediately, some attack take time. They're waiting for some conditions to occur and then they will trigger. Yeah. Exploitation, once delivered, weapon code is triggered, exploiting vulnerable application or system. Next is installation. Weapon install a backdoor on the target system, allowing persistent access. It creates backdoor entry. Command and control, outside server communicates with the weapon, providing hands-on keyboard access inside target system. Now it has created a backdoor entry, want to send data out of it through command and control server. Yeah, so it can create a backdoor entry, make a connection to the external server where it can send all the data. And then you got action on objectives. So depending on what is the objective or main goal of the attacker, attacker works to achieve the objective of the intrusion, which can include exfiltration. So you can send data out of organization, or destruction of data. They can destroy data, delete data, or intrusion of another target. Yeah, or they might select another target once they are done with this. So these are the general stages, 7 stages of an attack, particularly when we say APT-based attack. Now, there are a lot of research has been done around it to understand, is it possible we can kill the attack in phases? Is it possible for us to kill the attack in stage 2, stage 3, stage 4, stage 5, and so on? Possibly before it exploit. Rather than you detect something has happened, something bad happened to your system, is it possible for us to detect an abnormal patterns as soon as they hit the system? As soon as the attacker starts changing its behavior in different phases, is it possible for us to detect and understand something is not right, and you just, yeah? So there are a lot of research tools are coming up with those kind of things where you can do this kind of analysis. Now, when we do with something called, do you know what is called sandbox? What is sandbox? Right. So it's an isolated environment where you can test these kind of security based. You can run the malware. It doesn't harm your actual system. Yeah. Have you heard about MITRE attack? MITRE attack framework. So it's a company in the US, and it has developed MITRE framework attack. So there are a couple of frameworks. It's really popular in cybersecurity. And they have come up with this attack matrix. I don't know if you can read it, but I can help you a bit. So it has several columns. I'll just read them. Initial access, execution, persistence, privilege acceleration, defense invasion, credential access, discovery, lateral movement, collection, exfiltration, command and control. So they believe, as we said, cyber kill chain, the attack executes in different phases. And in order to execute an attack, the attacker might use different strategies. So for an attack, what is the initial access? Where they will start from? What will be the initial target, for example? So the kind of number of options there. So based on the attack, they have compiled everything and then come up with this framework. They're saying, as an attacker, if they want to get initial access, they will do one of these things. If they need to execute attack, they will do one of these things. They need to send data out of the organization, they will follow one of these, right? So it becomes, it gives you an idea and becomes kind of multiple combination of it. As an attacker, you need to know, I mean, this is what they have compiled, but then you can build, you can think about how attacker thinks, yeah? So they might have one of these axes in order to start their attack. Executions, they might execute it from third party, from proxy executions, third party software. So it's a long list. So if you are working on, let's say, if you don't want attack to execute, some malware gets into your system, but before it hits its execution phase, we want to destroy it. So you know for the execution, what are the techniques attackers generally follow? What are different ways by which the malware can be executed? Yeah, if you can build a tool that can capture that instance and then immediately kill the attack, you can save it. Right? Yeah, just in order to do so, you need to do some lower level programming, understanding sometimes the flow of your system software codes and stuff. But then this is a really powerful tool to help you what attacker think and how attacker thinks. And if you need to stop one of those things, what are the different techniques you will work, develop solution and tools against these techniques to stop it. Okay, last thing, yeah. Okay, let's have a break. It's already 10:30. Let's have a 10 minutes break. We'll come back and continue. Okay. Okay, let's continue it. Okay, just wanted to have some discussion around IDS. Yeah, what is the basic difference between when we say IDS versus IPS, intrusion prevention system, intrusion detection system? How they're different? What is the difference between IDS and IPS, intrusion prevention system and intrusion detection system? Detection system detects and then prevention. Yes, detect and prevent. Yeah. So detect, not just detect, but take action based on what it detects. Yeah. But most of the time we talk about IDS. Our focus is always intrusion detection rather than prevention. Why? Yeah, but we generally don't talk about intrusion prevention systems. We always say IDS, IDS, IDS. Why? Because the kind of intrusion prevention system we have, they are good in terms of if they understand traditional, more typical attacks or malware. Yeah, if they are identifying and saying this seems to be, we have quarantined it or we have deleted this. So that is the action you are taking, kind of saying it's an intrusion prevention system. So in IT system, maybe it's kind of well understood. When you got intrusion, you need to delete it or isolate it, whatever. So your software automatically does it, and will give you an alert saying, there's seems to be a malware. We have quarantined this file, and asking you to review it. You just go and see if you think, no, it's a legitimate file, but it has flagged it wrongly. You will take it back into your space. Otherwise, you will discard it. This is just deleted, seems to be virus. Right? In OT system, it's not that straightforward. Now the reason is because we are not talking about, obviously it has some part of IT when we say IT OT system. But then most of the part in the OT part, this is a physical system. And most of the intrusion detection system developed for IT system, they have like looking at buffer overflow, looking at IP address, looking at payloads, port numbers, and those kind of things. But those intrusion detection will not work in physical system. Yeah, because physical systems, your maybe IP address, port, everything is fine, but maybe the contents are different. So your intrusion detection does not have that capability to understand whether the data, physical data quantities are legitimate or malicious. Will it support the protocol it's intended to? Is it in the right format, and so on? Yeah, because physical systems are not designed with keeping security in mind. So attacking those systems considering there's no security is not difficult. Yeah, you can exploit an attack. You can exploit a protocol and perform a simple attack, even that can disrupt it, kind of temporarily. So for OT system or for a specific cyber physical system, we need to develop more customized ideas. Those ideas, they are not just looking at IT part or the black box of the packet, but they are also looking at kind of inside of it. So generally when we say IT system, we talk about two kind of detection system. One is host-based intrusion detection, one is network-based. Right? What we do in host-based? So what are the things you can look at? Host means any device. So you can deploy intrusion detection on a device. Now generally what we look for is logs. So one of those things is, what are the logs there? If you have put in, let's say, authentication mechanism in place, asking users to log in and then they can have access to this device, we create a log so that we can get a record who have accessed this and what time, and so you record timestamp and so on. Sometimes we also keep an eye how many applications we have got on this device, how many services running on this device, right? And then what they are doing, if people are using, what data they are kind of collecting or sending it to, and so on. And so this will help us understand device level security, more particular around access control, authentication, and what content and data that you have associated with this device. Broadly, the other one is called intrusion detection, where we mostly look at the traffic, right? So as an enterprise, as a company, what type of different data you receive? You have multiple devices, whatever you call it. Now, as an external attacker or people, users, clients, what type of data they will send through which applications? What kind of data you will see if you are a network analyst of a company? We just wanted to see what is our incoming and outgoing traffic. Yeah. What will be the applications that will be using or sending a lot of data? Let's take example of Google, right? What type of data Google generally receives? What is the kind of maximum volume they receive? Query. The query is fine. I'm saying what type of application? Why? For what purpose you use Google, for example? What are the different things you do with Google products? So one of the mostly doing things is surfing. You use Google search engine to search XYZ, right? Most of the things it's done by HTTPS. So you see there's a lot of traffic coming from HTTPS. We have get method and post method. Yeah. So get is when you receive data, post when you send data. What else? Which is typically true with YouTube. Watching YouTube, you are getting data. You're fetching data from Google YouTube server. What else? Email. Yeah, you use Gmails. So whoever is using Gmail, they're sending. So when we are using Gmail, what does it mean? Is that Gmail on this laptop? If I'm using Gmail, what is Gmail? What is that? What is happening? So companies have something called web servers, right? So whenever you are accessing their website, searching any queries, asking and fetching any data, they're connecting to the web server of the company. When you are using their mail service, you're connecting to their mail server, right? So Google has their mail server that has this application that looks like Gmail. It allows you to create an account. So it's just an interface that you see, right? When you say www.gmail.com. So you're connecting to the server. The server is giving you an interface. So you can register yourself, log in into this, and they have created how you manage your data in a way. All the data stored on that server, right? And whenever you log in, you can fetch. There's a new message, you can fetch it. Right. Now, there are a number of protocols involved. Now, we are not going much detail, but SMTP, MIME, post office POP protocol, IMAP protocols are there. Yeah. What's the difference between post office POP and IMAP? So POP is post office protocol, and IMAC is what? Internet Mail Access Protocol. What is that? Now this has also changed now the way you see your inbox. Now at present what we see, when there's a message delivered, you can also see the content, kind of a subject, but maybe partial content, one line. Somebody is sending you something. This is possible because of the IMAP. Earlier we used to have POP3. When we had an email around 20 years back, it was not looking like this. You have to log in every time where there's a new email. Now once you log in, you don't need to log in. Yeah, if there's a notification, new message, you just click in and you get to see immediately. But then if you're using post office, you have to connect it. And at that point of time, we were having dial-up connections. If you're connecting to email, you're just waiting for 2 minutes just to connect. Yeah, and then you're clicking on one message, that's something. So the way it works, if you're using POP3, generally POP3 doesn't deliver to you, to your message. You are reading message on their server. Now through this IMAP, we have more customized view now, where you can download your messages. Yeah, anytime when you open your Gmail app, all the inbox messages there. Why? Because you have downloaded them on your device. Even there's no internet, you can still read downloaded emails, which was not the case previously. If you're not connected to internet, you can't read it. Right? So web server, email servers. Whenever somebody needs to communicate, they will connect to your email, your email server. And the companies like IT tech companies which are offering you this kind of service, they receive large volume. For example, Gmail is free of cost. Many people use Gmails, right? Google search, YouTube, and so on. Similarly, for social media platforms like Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, they all are free, and they receive large volume of data. So as a network security expert, you will receive data connecting to your web server, mail server mostly. Yeah? You need to understand what kind of intrusion it could be, what protocol we are supporting. Now when we say SMTP and MIME, what is the difference? MIME, have you heard it? MIME, what is that? SMTP stands for Simple Mail Transfer Protocol. It is used to send your message from one end to another end. Right? Now when you send an email, how does it deliver to another person? I'm sending an email to him. What will happen? So you have a screen, we call it interface, your user agent, where you have two fields and your text body and everything. You say submit or send, right? You have a sender address. Your message from this system is sent to the server of this organization, right? Let's say if I'm using NIT Hamirpur email address, so obviously that message will go to the server of this institute, mail server, yeah, using SMTP. SMTP is a push protocol. It will move your message from one end to another end. Then your message from the server of this institute is being forwarded to the server of recipient. Right? If you're sending email to someone on Gmail, it will go to the Google server, mail server. Yeah? Again, SMTP there. Now it sits into the inbox. So server has allocated some space, we call it inbox, for every individual who has an account in that server, right? So that message goes there. Now how it's delivered to individual? It doesn't get into your phone automatically. It just sends notification. and you have to log in, connect to the internet, and then you fetch it. Yeah, which protocol we use? So SMTP doesn't have that capability. SMTP is a push protocol; it can just push. It cannot pull it. So in order to pull it, we use IMAP. Yeah, so IMAP is used to fetch it. Now SMTP supports ASCII bit, 7-bit characters, which are your English text. If you're texting anything in English, SMTP is fine. If you're typing something in Chinese, in Korean, any other language, SMTP doesn't have that capability to send it. For that one, we have MIME. MIME is, what is MIME? Multipurpose Internet Mail Extension, which says if you need to send text in different language, because these languages are not 7-bit codes, they are 8-bit, 9-bit codes. If you're using MIME, MIME has that capability to convert 9 or 8-bit code into 7-bit code, and then you can use SMTP to send it. Similarly, a recipient, those 7 bits, use MIME to convert them back to 8 bits or 9 bits. Yeah? If you're using images, audio, video, you need to use MIME. Then only you can. Now there's also called secure MIME. They have secure version of MIME where they look into authentication of data and so on and so forth, and integrity of data, making sure you receive the correct video, audio files, whatever. So that was about your network intrusion detection system, where we look at mostly traffic on the web, and mostly accessible protocol is HTTP. Yeah, whenever you search, whenever you fetch anything, it's HTTP or HTTPS. Or it could be email traffic, depending on the number of protocol we talk about. Yeah, and then you kind of put some indicators. You look for IP addresses and payloads and type of protocols, and so on and so forth. What is heat map? And why it's required? What's its use? So this is an example of a heat map. So let's look at this. It says number of days here, and then machines or devices, for example. If I'm monitoring every day how many devices being targeted with any attack, or how many times somebody is using, how many times the users of this institute are using device X. Every time when you access it, I'll just keep the counter, increment the counter, right? Now so this kind of mapping will help you understand the big picture. If I have thousands of devices, by looking at this one chart, I can get a sense which are the devices that are mostly accessible. People oftenly use them, more frequently use them, because the numbers are, and as the number grows up, it becomes much darker or a different. Again, it's up to you how you see the colors. For example, here, green means low risk, yellow means medium risk, high risk, and critical risk or something. Yeah. So that's how you can design heat. Heat maps are really powerful to understand the big picture. And then there are a number of applications you can think of to design heat map for. Right? So it says, if I just read it, the heat map represents the number of instances of a set of behaviors occurred on each machine each day in this example. This heat maps enables the analyst to quickly focus on, for example, in this case, machine 5, day 5, which is 72, if you see this number, which is the darkest number. So out of these, this particular machine is more critical. Yeah. To create a cyber heat map, you need first gather data on your network vulnerabilities and potential threats. Then use a virtualized tool to plot this data on a grid, and that template is also available online, where different colors represent varying level of risk, with hotter colors indicate high risk areas, cooler colors signifies low risk areas. Key steps includes identifying assets, accessing threats, assigning risk scores, regularly updating the map. Yeah, so you can write a program that can plot it, count it based on whatever is your logic, and then create this map with different colors. Yeah, and then you can give a range. 80 to 90 this color, 90 to 70 to 80 this color, 60 to 70 this color. So this can help you understand what are those critical things which are in this color. Now we are thinking everything to be, all these things are done previously manually. People are used to create those things, understand. Now we want to automate all those things. If I just wanted to understand what are the critical assets, people mostly use it every day, I'll just create this map. I might also look at the log saying how many unsuccessful attempt accessing device X. This might help me understand people are trying to break it. Yeah. So you build that kind of understanding with these simple tools. Then we got something called security, information, and event management. Have you heard this? It's a technology to collect and aggregate data from various systems, allowing organization to meet compliance requirements while safeguarding against threat that provides real-time analysis, monitoring, and alerting on security logs. So now we have number of tools that supports SIM, security information event management, which just simply says we are collecting information, collecting data, try understand any cyber event within this. And if we find it, we want to manage it. So it's kind of a software or a platform, you can say, that alerts you, that looks at logs, who is accessing what device, and for any unsuccessful attempt, for any abnormal activity, they created a kind of a log, and if they find something unusual, they can flag it, alert users, send you a message saying something is not right, look at this, rather than, because we are talking about a very large amount of volume, and there might be different parameter, different indicator that we need to look into. So companies have come up with the tools like this. When you deploy this tool, this will do 10 different things. Compare the baseline and help you understand when things go wrong. It will flag you, send you a notification saying something looks suspicious at network level, something suspicious at this device level. Somebody get into the system by compromising this device. Somebody made 4 unsuccessful attempts on this device, something like that. So it can help you to understand the big picture, and then you can derive number of reports out of it. Resource related, what happened in the day, what process are you running, how many times, or up to what time the system was down or issues, whatever. So those reports will also help you understand what were the issues in different parts of your system, right? What kind of current threats system organization is experiencing. So these tools are really helpful because they can scale, they can handle large scale data and then do variety of things for you. Now in terms of OT and IT, generally IT look for network. As I said, they're more into network side or data breach. So it's a network monitoring, user behavior analysis, what user is accessing, whether they have permission, whether they're authorized to do so. Are there any unsuccessful attempts to log in? Threat intelligence feeds, incident management. OT more on device sides, asset side. So they look for device performance, asset identification, process sensor data, and so on. So they are more into process, asset, device, and try to understand whether those things are okay or not, and not just the data. So if I look at this, say information source, the comparison, OT system utilize operational data such as sensors outcome, machinery health metrics. On the other hand, IT SIM relying on digital element like network activity, user interaction, and log files. Right? As we discussed, even creating log file on OT system is not easy. We don't have logs for those. Evaluation metrics emphasize on the importance of the safety, reliability, and productivity. So as we discussed that most of the OT system, they come up with a safety system inbuilt with it. In the worst case, the safety system activates and it connect the system, right, in order to mitigate the massive damage. Reliability, what is reliability? So reliability simply say how well the system is before any error, any disruption comes. You know, how reliable my car? What does it mean? So you generally, when you go to buy a product, let's say you're going to buy a car, what do you look for? If you're a new buyer, possibly you will look for how it looks like. Yeah? But if you are a buyer who already drove a car, you understand everything about car, you look for the specification. You wanted to have a car that can go miles without any issues. Yeah? You don't want to buy a car which looks fancy, but then every other day there's some problem with this. So reliability is like that. We want to have a reliable system that can work for months and years without any issues. Right? So that is the emphasis of physical systems. On the other hand, IT system focus on CIA. Yeah, their priority is confidential information. On the other hand, OT we have availability is the primary key. Availability, then integrity, and then we say confidentiality. Monitoring scope, it supports decentralized visibility, offering both on-site and remote data access. For IT system, generally is a centralized approach via security operational center. What is that? So OT system, since we are talking about a large-scale system, keeping it centralized, having a lot of issues. We talk about like single point of failure and so on. So earlier, for example, if a country having 4 grids, they were standalone grids. But then nowadays, we kind of connect all the grid to make it more decentralized system. Now we are also supporting decentralizing it so that, for example, in the case of smart grid, you can fulfill the demand of energy locally with microgrid, with solar panels and other things. Yeah, but IT system is mostly centralized for university, enterprise, whatever, and they look for something called security operational center, where they look for what going on in the organization, and then mostly looking at data, where the data is stored, what data is coming in and going out. Yeah. Oops. So in the ICS system, industrial control system, particularly in smart grid, there are a number of attacks being targeted. So we talk about Stuxnet the other way. Yeah, Stuxnet worm targeted high-value Iranian assets. So the intention of Stuxnet was to target or damage the components which are having high value. Yeah, the rotator, the centrifugal, they create centrifugal force. Ukraine power cut was cyber attack. We'll talk about Ukraine grid in a minute, maybe. Right. So what could be the potential indicator in IT/OT system? So if I give some examples, unusual outbound network traffic. Now sometimes what is happening is this example of insider threat, for example. People sitting in company sending out some data of the companies. Yeah? Now people earlier used to copy it through USB drive. That's why in companies nowadays you don't have USB drive. There's no kind of hard disk, no floppy drive, no USB drive, nothing. You can't copy any data. Now many organizations also restrict on what you can attach to your email. Right? They can control what data can go outside. They can figure it out what, who you're sending to. Most of the time, if you're working for government organizations or sensitive organizations, you can't even have anything stored on your devices like laptop. You can't. There's nothing on your laptop at all. You always connect to the server, do something there. You can't copy anything. You can't take picture. You can't screenshot it. Nothing. Yeah, if you do that, they have a tool that can detect it. For example, if you, I don't know banking, but if you log in your mobile banking app, try to take a screenshot, it doesn't work. Yeah, it says you can't take it because of the nature of applications. If you do this on LinkedIn, if your LinkedIn app, screenshot it, it will detect it. It will not stop it, but it will detect saying somebody has taken screenshot. So we have tools that can help understand what employee in the organization, what they are doing, what kind of data they are sending, copying, yeah, for whatever purpose, which is ideally not allowed in a way, in ethical sense, because your intention might be to benefit the competitor in a way. Yeah, maybe you're planning joining some other company, and you're taking all the credential information with you to help them. So how you stop this from happening? So those kind of tools are really important for a company. Sometimes they have some silent software. Whatever activity you are doing on a device, the logs of that is being sent to somewhere else. People are looking at it, what you are doing, sitting here. Yeah? When you're sending in emails, they're capturing some stuff and things like that. Login anomalies. When you have unsuccessful attempts, you're accessing device, you put user ID password, goes wrong. Right? Let's say if you're using online banking, for example, you put password says invalid, you put another password, invalid, then it's say blocked. Yeah? So it's warn you saying you have attempted 2 unsuccessful attempts out of 3. This is your last attempt. Why? So that we can restrict the access because of the brute force. What is brute force? Brute force attack? All possible comments to look for. So when we had this iPhone, if you so iPhone has a feature where you can kind of, if you lost your iPhone, you can go online and you can delete data from the device remotely. Yeah, and that will allow you. So it's a kind of 4-digit PIN it asks for. If you don't remember, there's 4 digits, you know how many combinations it got, and you can try. You can write a program possibly and feed it. And there was no restrictions on how many attempts you can make. So it's not that difficult for an attacker to crack it. And that's why they start restricting. You can't make too many attempts. For a 4-digit number, 6-digit number, or even 2-digit number, even 3-digit number, 3 attempts are not, it can save you. Yeah, so there's always saying you have an 8-digit password at least, and then if you're giving 3 attempts, no one can guess those 3 attempts. It's a very low probability someone can get the actual, very, very low. And that's one of the reasons they are saying if you're not the actual person, even you are the right person, you forget, recover it, recover your password, but then we'll keep your environment safe, right? Now, how you recover, how you reset password? In older time, on the spot, it says a forget password, and will pop up window where you can put your password, create a new password, or maybe asking some questions, simple questions, hint questions, yeah, that you do generally when you register for it. But then getting answer to the hint questions, sometimes it's not that difficult, because most of the time people have very usual answer that maybe your friends or people who know you generally knows. Say what's the surname of your mother, what is your first school, what is your first job, which city you, blah, blah, something like that. So they're not difficult to identify in a way. Now what they did, whenever you forget password, they send an email to your another email account. Yeah, and through there you get a link and reset it, which is much secure way of doing things. Okay, increase volume in historian read. When you see there's a lot of data coming. Communication with malicious command and control server. When you see that one of the devices is actually connected to CNC server, that means intention is to send data out of the network. Geographical irregularities, access patterns, anomalies in privileged user account activities. Somebody is trying to use something which is not authorized to, or they have access but from something different locations, right? For example, if I'm logging to my device from here, I got a notification. It seems to be a different location. You're not in UK, yeah? So it's helping me. Are you the right person? Are you the person who was accessing it from different location? Yes, it's fine. If no, then reset it. click on this link, do something. So they send email alerts to us. Yeah. So if you think that somebody's need to be accessing resource in this region at this place, but if you see this remote access, they want to confirm, is it you? Do you have access actually? Do you access, and yes, then it's fine. Otherwise, seems to be suspicious. If you think this is suspicious, then take some action to recover it. Application using the wrong port, response size sometimes too large, could be DOS or denial distributed DOS attack. Unexpected usage of controller resources. Sometimes attacker try controllers, right? What somebody control your PLC? They can change the logic. And then once logic is changed, if I'm saying the password is incorrect, do nothing. Password incorrect, allow them, whatever. So you change the logic, so these are critical points. And it's not just the data. What if someone take control of your system? They have control for everything, all the data, all the devices, all resources. Port scanning of control devices, control logic modification, unsupported unusual function code, mismatch between control logic and historian. So you always look for how it is supposed to be from the history. If you think something suspicious, then because you always need to connect the baseline, right? And generally baseline, you can create baseline more confidently as you have more data. If you can look into what is the pattern look like in the past, it can help you to predict in the future. If we are expecting something very similar, so if something sudden come, you can always compare with the baseline. Seems to be unusual. And then you need to look into this. Right, so just a table for this. For example, you got a couple of attacks, and then we wanted to understand which of these indicators could be part of this. Somebody performing attack, then they are hitting those indicators. So kind of a mapping of this table. Now, what we did, so this work is one of my PhD student who look into try understand. So again, when we do this kind of research, academic people can develop algorithms and understand the problem and so on, but practically they are not working on physical systems. So you have to reach out to the industry people to actually understand the problem that you think is the problem is actually a problem or not, or might be something else. Yeah. So he actually created a questionnaire, set of questions, interviewed some of the people from industry, and try understand what are the key problems and possibly the indicators, because it's very hard to understand what are the indicators in OT system. So OT system is very context specific, right? It depends on what type of devices are there. If devices are different, the whole context become different. Running different protocols, so you are calculating, computing, looking at different things, different parameters. So the whole point is to try and understand if we have an IT system always have some kind of predefined indicators in a way. You always look for IP address and so on. So he looked into try and understand if the IT indicators can help us in OT system. If yes, up to what extent they can help, which are the indicators that can help us, and what are the indicators that we cannot cover from IT and we need to develop those for context specific or OT systems. So he kind of thought about the system and put in place indicators, the one we talk about now, where this sits in your Purdy reference model. Some of the indicator from IT side, some of the indicator sits in ZNZORD, some of the indicators on supervisory level, layer 2, level 0, level 1, and so on. Yeah. And then he went out to the people, interviewed them, and then people quoted something. Now, when we do this kind of research, we are more interested in to understand the unexpected thoughts. Yeah? People might come and say, oh, this will not work on IT. This will not work on OT. Yeah? Patching is not easy. We can't kind of keep down our system. So for example, somebody says there's no one fit size when you're talking about IOC. Indicator of compromise. It's not an IT system like the IT system where we mostly look at the network level. We are mostly talking about data. where we have certain indicators in terms of how data has been sent or in and out. So mostly when we say data, we are talking about data in a particular format, following particular packet, size, protocol, port, IP, and so on. But in OT, ICS is very different depending on the system we are talking about, depending on the devices we are talking about, and the kind of attack you are talking about. The second major thought was sometimes the attack occurs at IT level, and with current level of maturity, industry network, security is impossible to differentiate between legitimate use and attack. So we talked about this a little bit yesterday. We'll talk more. Somebody sends a command, that's a legitimate command. So one thing is if it is an unlegitimate malicious command, maybe IDS can flag it because it's coming from somewhere else, some other source, some other IP, whatever. But if it is coming, somebody compromised my laptop, that I'm part of this institute, somebody compromised my laptop and then sending some emails, whatever. It's impossible to understand that I haven't sent anything because it's coming from my system. Yeah? In a way, if the command is malicious, command is legitimate, but it's a fake command, sending by somebody else, not the actual operator. But the command is legitimate, seems to be legitimate. It's impossible to detect it, to understand this is not as legitimate, it's a fake command. Yeah? In those scenarios, what are you going to do? You simulate it. You always simulate and see how it will behave if I allow it to the system. So operator always has that opportunity to decide on whenever there's a flag, when the command is being sent. Whenever there is a suspicion, you always check whether. So that's where we have digital twin, we have large scale co-simulation environment where you can simulate and see the effect. So I'll be talking about that. We talk about this. We develop a simulator, I'll talk about that. Physical logical system access at unusual times. Somebody coming to this lab at night, for example, yeah, which is unusual because classes are from 9 to 5, 9 to 6 or whatever. Unless people know that PhD student or whoever access it, right? Even we know that maybe 2 PhD students sits here, but what 10 people are coming here? Something not right. Somebody who has not access, they're just jumping in. Changes of traffic pattern through firewall between businesses and control center. So again, sometimes traffic changes between, again, if you have multiple network, attacker might fabricate packet depending on what level of security you have. Alarm generated by PLC in combination with other IOC can be a clear indicator of compromise. So somebody said, okay, you're detecting IOC, which is fine, but also look at PLC logic, what the logic says. So it's a programming logic control. It's a controller that controls. If you write a program, it will do the things. Check this, do this, do this. It will do those things. You detect indicator and see whether these indicators are in line with this, these instructions that you said. Is it following those things? If not, something's wrong. Either somebody has changed the code or those indicators says data is incorrect or protocol, whatever. Legacy equipment software may not be generating logs. That would be used for security monitoring purpose. So again, that's one of the difficulty that we don't have enough logs for OT systems. Right? Once you have log, let's say if I'm creating a log, who can access it? User ID and password, anybody log, enter it, I have a log that this person has logged in at this point of time. But an OT system, most of these devices don't support logs. So as I said, they have default passwords. People with the user roles, they can go and access it. And there's no record, there's no log who have accessed it, whether it's a legitimate, it's a malicious, whether they are authorized, not authorized, and so on. So those are big problems in those systems. So he looked into investigating usable indicators against cyber attacks in industrial control system. And he published it in Symposium of Usable Privacy and Security. What is usable security? Have you heard this term, usable security? Usable security is simply security of a product that users use, clients. For example, your any product in your mobile, for example, right? So we wanted to look around what is the security for that application that people use. How useful that product is in terms of security. Is it easy for them to understand? So if I say, okay, in order to use this, you have to create a password, or password should be 100-digit long, should have XYZ. Can you remember it? No. On the other hand, if I say, okay, when you register, you don't need to remember password, just use your thumb, biometric. Is it easier? That's what is usable security. You are developing security in those products that are easy for user to follow. Otherwise, they will stay away for those. I don't care about this product. I'll use something else. I can't remember 100 bits or 50 bits. So you are developing product in a way that are acceptable for users to spend time on. Because as a user, your priority just to access it, rather than getting into trouble that before even you have to access, you have to remember this, do that, right? If I say if you solve this puzzle, you will be entered in the system, and then puzzle takes 10 minutes. Will you prefer to do that system? Possibly not, right? And there's so many software and tools and products available. So usable security simply says you need to design security in such a way which is easier for users to follow. They can accept it, rather than they are panicking or they are not really understanding what they need to do. Yeah? So that's about usable security. Do we want a break? Then I'll talk about this. So let's have another 10 minutes break. We'll come back and then continue with the work that one of my students did. Talk about that. Yeah, then see you in 10 minutes. Okay. Right, welcome back. So this is the work one of my student kind of thinking about how to simulate attack, large scale attacks. And so there are a number of ways. One, if you're working in this in the sector, smart grid or power grid, whatever you call it, either you have to access to the real infrastructure so that you can run attack, simulate, and understand in a more realistic, real-time environment, which is kind of impossible to get because these are real-time systems. If any company give you that access, that means, and at any point of time anything goes wrong, then they lose their reputation. They might, those experiments might damage their component and so on and so forth. That might also have impact on their safety system. So what we do, second, you can create a test bed. More specifically for research, you can create a small version of it where you can deploy some devices, create a small setup, and you run some experiments on to this. Now one of the, which is good because you can have realistic devices that are being used in industry, right? So I remember when I was a postdoc like 10 years back, we were having a project of US Department of Energy, and we wanted to test a similar thing. So, and there were two power companies involved in the project. So one of the constraints was how you test it. You were talking about an attack that this will impact XYZ, but how are you going to model it? How are you going to test it? So what we did at that point in time, we bought new devices, and then we created a setup, and we utilized one of their isolated locations. Yeah, so they gave us kind of a little part of it, saying you can connect your own device. Yeah, we will give you connectivity, but your attack will not move there. Your attack should be within the devices that you have. So you run the command within what you have and then test it. Test bed, most of the university now have some sort of test beds, which are representing a kind of smaller system of the realistic system. But one of the key things for this kind of test bed is that they are not scalable. Yeah? If your research is around device level security, test beds are excellent. Yeah? You're looking at one device and security of it or whatever. For example, if you're looking into mobile security, handset, you can have a variety of handset and you can possibly do this. Easy. What we are talking about is large scale system. They're too complex. You cannot have test bed of those systems. Even if you are able to, if you got a couple of devices, you can run and set up and mount an attack and understand something. You are still talking about a very small system. However, the actual system is much bigger. So maybe the simulation, the results you are seeing on local system, they will not reflect on the realistic large scale systems. So the choice that we have is this simulation environment. Either you create simulation tools or you use some of those tools which are capable of simulating large scale systems, right? So generally in those kind of situations, we go for simulations, software simulations, where you can customize them and they support some kind of scalability. So in this process, what we did, we created a simulation environment. So we developed a prototype of co-simulation that emulates typical smart grid system, mount cyber attack scenarios to evaluate develop tools from the attack perspective, and identify indicator of compromise. So you're creating an attack, mounting it over the environment, physical system, understand what are the indicators that says these behaviors have changed. There are different patterns to that. You extract those indicators and try and understand what is happening to the system. And you do some study out of it. So the question what we answering is, how can we achieve continuously monitoring and identifying iOS in industrial control system? As we said, indicators vary as per the context, as per the application that we are talking about, yeah, for OT system. So the indicator that we have talked about, they all are, some of them may be applicable, some of them may not be applicable, and they can vary depending on the type of attack we are talking about. So it's quite difficult to accurately study and evaluate attack behavior in this process. So what we do is we look at, okay, what kind of simulation tools are available, what their capabilities are, what kind of attack we can target, what kind of results we can evaluate, yeah, and understand. There are a couple of challenges in terms of working on ICS system. One is complexity and interdependence. So what generally is available in the market for power system, there's a power system simulations. For example, vehicular network, vehicular system, there's a car simulations, and so on and so forth. Yeah, maybe healthcare, there's a healthcare based simulations. They are not cybersecurity. They are not supporting cybersecurity. Maybe the software that we have having cybersecurity, they are not doing anything with healthcare or power system. So these are isolated systems. You can test cybersecurity, but more in IT environment. You can do power system, but you can't do cybersecurity in that. Yeah, so there's no system, there's no integrated system that can help you to say you can mount an attack and understand things. Second, if you look at more kind of older software, they are not scalable enough. And since they are hard coded or open source, they are not easy to extend it in terms of functionality. They're so complex you don't understand, so you don't really get a sense how to extend them. Some of these software don't have capability in terms of decision making, how you can, what data, how and what extent of data you get, and how this data help you to make certain decisions. And there are matrices, and data collection is very limited. So with those kind of context in mind, some simulation just directly simulate, but without giving you any indications that you can derive out of it. Because if you are able to collect data, then you can process and see, in normal scenario, my data should look like this. And in the attack scenario, if it is behaving, you just compare those from the baseline. If you have a variety of data, it will help you to do several things. But many of the simulation do not give you that kind of capability. So what we did is we tried to develop our own simulation environment. So we designed based on typical infrastructure smart grid system, primary data flow, Modbus. Since we are in UK, so UK, European Union, we use Modbus, not DNP3. All right, so we use DNP3. So in this case, we use Modbus. And this is based on master-slave communication model. What is master-slave model? Have you heard master-slave? What is that? Following, okay. All right, so there's a master that will always give instruction, and slave doesn't do anything until it receives instruction from master, and it does it. Yeah. So in this case, we created multiple substation in a simulation environment. We go control center, number of devices there, and we mirror IDS on that. And this is how it looks like. So we got three components of the simulation environment. One is called cyber communication module. The other is called control center module. The third one is called power system management module. In order to run the whole cycle, we need power system. We need communication network that connects IT to OT, and then you need some sort of IT system. Yeah, and then control center that can send commands and to change data and open circuit breakers and so on. So the number of open source software that we have integrated to this. One is called core network that we use for communication module. There's another called SCADA BR we use to represent SCADA system. Then there's Open PLC we use for representing PLC functionality to this. And then we use Power Word Simulator. So this is how it looks like. Yeah, so you got loads and buses and generator and blah, blah, blah. So this is the Power Word Simulator. So our goal is to, sitting at control center, we want to fetch data So you sense data from the field device, right? Through communication passed to this SCADA system through PLC. You're processing, you're running some algorithm, understanding how the system states look like. If you think there's some lines are overloaded and things like that, that means you need to make certain action. So you need to send certain commands, maybe to reduce something, increase something, detach generator, increase the capacity, reduce it, depending on what is required. Yeah. So you pass that behavior in this power word simulator, and you did that take action. So that's how you understand how an attack can impact your physical system. If it does, is it possible? How easy and difficult for you to recover it? If you take certain actions, send few commands, will it help you to fix things? Sometimes if lines are too overloaded, your components are damaged, it's hard to recover them. Yeah? And in most of the time, those situations where there's a coordinated attack, you're not just opening circuit breaker, we're also targeting, for example, generators. If generator don't work, right, there's a problem. So we created that kind of environment in virtual machine, VMware, using VMware. So I just talked about this. So this is the communication module. We use core called Common Open Research Emulator. This was developed by US Naval Research Laboratory. It provides a platform to run different applications such as IP tables for firewall. What is IP tables? Help manage what are the IPs, inbound and outbound and so on. Snort, have you heard Snort for IDS? It's a tool or software that you can use to, it's kind of a Wireshark. Yeah, what is Wireshark? By the way, possibly we'll do some exercise with Wireshark. So if you don't have Wireshark on your laptop, please make sure you install it. It's open source software, you can freely install it. Yeah. So Snort is kind of similar application where you can detect the traffic or fabricate packet and then inject it into the traffic. So you can do this by Snort. Because those are the things, how are you going to understand whether your attack is working or not? How are you going to validate this thing? So we have these tools, Snort or Wireshark. So what I can do is, if I'm modeling an attack, sending a malicious packet from this device to another device using this Wi-Fi, I can have a monitoring system. So I can look at all the packets as well. Because in order to validate, you need to identify this is the packet. So you create a fabricated packet and send it. You have a monitoring system, for example, Wireshark. Yeah. So Wireshark has capability to capture the network if you have a permission, of course. Otherwise, it's an ethical thing. So what I can do, for example, I can have a Wireshark. I can start capturing traffic, all the devices which are connected to this Wi-Fi. And I can get to know what you guys are doing at this point. If you're using internet, I can get a sense. I can capture all the data and can analyze in this hour, in this class, what people have done. Yeah? And then when we wanted to inject an attack, we also wanted to test how impactful mine. Is it possible for people to figure it out that this is a fabricated packet? When you capture that packet, you analyze this thing. Are you able to distinguish this seems to be suspicious packet? As an attacker, your aim is to design a packet in such a way it can bypass the system. So we do this kind of activity, but you also need Snort or Wireshark or whatever to monitor things. Then you got SSH, secure cell, that allow you to connect remote devices and so on. Again, it's good for a scalable system. What is VLAN? Core module VLAN. So through VLAN, we connect this module to control center module. What is VLAN? Virtual LAN? What does it mean? Network? What is the need of VLAN? So LAN is local area network. What is virtual LAN? Why we need it? So when you are talking about local area network, we are talking about physically connecting devices, creating a LAN, connecting a local network, yeah, all the devices that we have PCs. I might have multiple LANs in this institute, but I want to use one of the PC in this lab, maybe another PC from another lab, third PC from another lab. In order to do so, you have to put them all together. That might be possible physically, might not be possible if they are too far or whatever. But since they are part of the network, I can create a VLAN, virtual LAN, and I can decide which devices or PCs should be part of this LAN. So I can pick devices from different LANs, put them together. That is the virtual LAN. Yeah. Then we talk about control center module, which is having two parts that works on Modbus master and slave model, SCADA. SCADA BR helps you representing your SCADA server, SCADA system, and then OpenPLC will help you to design your programmable logic controller, where you can put some logic, what to control and what are the instructions you want to send. So it's an open source human machine interface editor called SCADA BR. So there are people sitting at substations, they are having access to HMI interface. So if they find that something is wrong, some label is going up or down, whatever, so they can send command locally. Yeah? To reduce something, to detach, attach, whatever, at local level. But then they have only understanding at that particular substation. They don't know the big picture. People sitting at control center having a big picture because they have multiple substations and they're fetching all the data and processing it. But the person who is working on substation only have understanding at local level. They don't know what's happening at this other substation or other locations. So we send operational data to the security module. And so what is this? It's interconnect using VLAN interconnect. It can pass values from communication network, sense data, pass this, all the power measurements, and then you can test those measurements on the power word system. Sorry, this one. So as I said, power word simulator, it's a commercialized simulator, but they also have their free version for educational purpose. If you are doing research or just wanted to use it, so they have a smaller version that it's again free of cost. You can download it. Maybe they will ask you your email ID, name, etc. But then if you really want to test it, scalable system, then it's a commercialized version. You have to pay for the license. And this allow you to have, they have 250,000 buses. It's really large system that you can scale and then test it. So you can do steady state and transient stability framework. It's evaluate power flow analysis. They have some functionality called SimAuto. SimAuto allow you to connect. So for example, if you have an interface, so what generally we can also do is I can create a tool in Python, communication interface or whatever, and I can connect Python to this software through interface called SimAuto. Right? If I'm making changes on the interface, I'll show you how it works in the other. I can pass that behavior in the simulation and then run it. So I can attack on my Python module and then passing that behavior, those change values to the power word and then simulate it. So again, it's supporting Modbus protocol. And what we look into is the behavior-based monitoring and power system monitoring. Behavior-based means how users are interacting, what devices, communication, changes, and so on. The protocol level understanding. And then power system monitoring in a way, when you run this, how the system behaves, what it looks like, whether lines are overloaded, if you have what action you need to take, and so on. This is all about security analytics. Modbus, maybe you can skip all that part, but possibly what you need to understand Modbus supporting level 2 with serial lines, slave bus, master slave, or it can support TCP as well. So depending on the application that you are working, you can use Modbus protocol for layer 2 communication. There you don't need internet. Device can talk to another device directly. If you are fetching data, sending it, connecting it to internet, you need Modbus TCP. Yeah? So there are variations of protocol. Oops. Again, Modbus, whether you talk about Modbus, DNP3, all these protocols are proprietary protocols. They've been designed to do certain tasks. They were not designed for cybersecurity anyway. But now we are using them and identifying, oh, they all are insecure. There are a lot of vulnerabilities. And how you derive this? Have you accessed CBE, by the way, on web? So if you Google it, CBE, you get to a website. It's a CBE data set. And there, if you type Modbus vulnerability, you got a list of that. So these were the possible vulnerability have been identified on Modbus. So you got to know what are the issues. As an attacker, you need to exploit one of those, in order to get into the system. And they also give you an update. For example, this one says this vulnerability has been modified since it was last analyzed by NVD. It is awaiting a reanalysis which may result in further change to information provided. So someone has reported. People around our researcher, they can report that there's a vulnerability they find. They kind of give some proof. They evaluate. If they find it's true, they'll publish it, so that anyone get a sense, get to know that this is the vulnerability. If you're using Modbus, pay attention to it. Right? But then people also look around, are there any patches? If there are patches, they will update it, saying there's no vulnerability, this has been fixed. Yeah? By looking at this database, you get a sense. What are the current vulnerability on this particular server, on this protocol, and so on. So it's a really nice database for help us. We also did some experiments. So one of the experiments what we did is disruption of communication loop as a result of Modbus field flooding attack. So we perform a DOS attack. And the whole idea is HMI is fetching data from PLC in a loop. So if you see this, they're looking for temperature and humidity values. And we said here every 7 milliseconds. So what is happening? HMI sends a request, waiting for a response, saying send me data. Waiting for a response, and get a response, get the data, and then you acknowledge it, saying I got my data, I got data. Yeah. So every few minutes, doing the same thing. So in this particular case, it was 7 milliseconds to complete the loop in terms of sending request, getting your data, acknowledging it. And they are doing in every 100 milliseconds. Right? So you run a loop for 7 milliseconds, wait for 100 milliseconds, then again run 7 milliseconds, then wait, and so. And then we tried to fabricate an attack. We crafted an attack that can be injected in that 100 millisecond gap. Yeah. So we created a fabricated packet, put the sequence number, acknowledgement number from the previous packet, and injected just after that. And as a result, we were able to create a DOS temporarily for some time. Yeah. So you can disable that device temporarily. It was a small attack that we did. So in a way we change the protocol data unit and so on. So I'm not going to detail, but just give you a reflection that it's as easy, as simple. And most of these information available online. What are the vulnerabilities in Modbus? The number of documents available. How does Modbus protocol works? Yeah. And if you understand what are the issues, how can you tweak this? You can perform large number of attacks on this. So if you see this, we have injected number of packets here. The kind of orange line you see, and the system doesn't understand it. For them, it seems to be an error. There's some kind of error that is temporarily blocking it. However, it's in fact an attack that blocking this device to respond. So it was a kind of few seconds attack. I might change it to a more kind of catastrophic attack. I can compromise multiple devices, multiple PLCs in a similar way. Yeah. That are part of real-time systems. So this is one of the simulations. This is the video. Just watch it. I don't know if you can see things, but but then we just want to run that software, the simulation environment. So we are initializing number of nodes as a communication nodes. We're describing how many devices we have, what is the power system model we are using. So power system has different model depending on how large system you want to test it. So they have a small test sort of scale system, and then larger, we call it IEEE bus systems. So that's how it looks like. Once you are able to run it, you are creating number of nodes, connecting system altogether, and then you can inject data at any point in communication network or so, and then you run the whole loop and test it. So this is what we kind of analyze with this experiment as well, where you see it says unauthorized write request to a PLC, classification potentially bad traffic. So we are monitoring a check and seeing whether it's working or not. So in some sense, in some places it gives you warning, but others it doesn't. We also run say capture the value under the normal scenario. So under the normal scenario, this coil value should be 1. But then when you are saying Modbus query exceeding the expected threshold, and this becomes 0. So that's how you can create a fabricate packet and inject it. Yeah, we are also looking at some matters, for example, sensors, their source IP, port numbers, destination, and so on, what protocol they are supporting. So you need this kind of all information to understand. If you got any suspicions, you need to look into and then build your understanding whether this is actually a malicious packet, malicious command, or it's a routine command. Sometimes it can help you if someone has injected and it's kind of, we can have indicator mostly from IT side. IDs can flag it saying this is suspicious, look for source IP. Blah. But sometimes it's, as I said, it's a fake, but the legitimate command, someone has sent it. But from the from the legitimate device, it becomes impossible for you to know. Then only what we can do is run it. You run it and test it and understand what's happening. Yeah. Okay, I'll pick one more topic before we end for today. Public subscriber smart grid model. So again, it's a too complex model. There's so many devices there. And what is public subscriber? Have you heard this? Public subscriber model? Okay, it's very similar to the way you have feeds, right? So it says, so people always say, oh, press the bell icon, and whenever I publish a video, you get a notification, things like that, kind of thing. So you got publishers who publish on different topics. You got subscriber who subscribe to the topic. Whenever there's a content by publisher, subscriber gets a notification and then can access your data. Yeah, so that is kind of model that we follow. So let's say one device sending data that should be sent to 100 devices. So it should not be like you are sending 100 commands to send that data to every other device. Rather, I will follow this model, and all those 100 devices will act as a subscriber to this device. Whenever this device publishes anything, send anything, it will automatically be sent to all those devices. Yeah. So public subscriber model, they follow unicast, multicast, broadcast communication. We know what is that. Yeah. In most of the time, we do use multicast message. As I say, public subscriber model. We need to, whenever there's a publisher publishing anything, there are many subscribers. Not all, so that's why we are not saying broadcast. Many subscribers, that's why we're calling it multicast. Yeah. And this can be done parallelly, so you need not to wait sending one and then sending other. You can do this at the same time. It's allow you faster response, reduce delivery latency, and so on. So we call it a poll. Whenever you need data, you send a poll request. Yeah? And then you got a response in this substation set terms. In for substation, we have some IEEE standards for power substation called IEC standard, IEC 61850. Maybe for us it's weird to remember, but if you ask any person who work on power system, mostly they know this. It's similar to if somebody asks you, do you know OSI model? You say, yeah, I know it. Yeah, it's very similar to them. Anybody who's working around power system, they know this. What is this standard? It talk about how you manage power system at substation. Yeah. Security feature communication protocol used in substation automation are not included because security was not their priority. They haven't designed their protocols, methods for security purpose. So that's why there are two issues. One, high speed performance requirement. And for some processors, they really need data faster. Messages need to be sent in very fast. So it's hard to put in security. Now we have IoT, lightweight cryptography, XYZ. But like 10 years back, 20 years back, there was nothing like that even. Yeah, we were relying on either RSA or we were still saying DES, those kind of things. And second is limited computational resource of the deployed IEDs. If you are using IEDs, RTU, those devices, they have their own limited capability in terms of processing power, in terms of storage, and so on. So they can't handle heavy computations. Yeah, you can't deploy their RSA, say, oh, pick the large primes and do this and do that. They don't have that capability to do that. So in most of the places, we don't have any security control in place. Or if there's a weak or default security where people are just XORing or kind of. Now, if I look at this, so this is the typical scenario. Substation, you got different IEDs. The merging unit, you got different IEDs connecting to HMI, router switches, this is SCADA system, control center, and so on. Now, many of these protocols, devices actually, many of these devices operate with protocols at layer 2. In order to operate them, in order to communicate them, they don't need internet because they are layer 2 devices. They can exchange data. Now, what are the most issues? Not just power system, but let's say talk about IT systems. What are the protocol at layer 2? Have you heard ARP? So there's always saying ARP spoofing, poisoning, RARP. What are those? Most of these protocols don't have security at all. And the way they work, they're just saying, so for example, ARP is used to derive IP to physical MAC address. If you know IP address of a machine, you wanted to know the MAC address of this machine, you send an ARP packet and then get the IP address. So these are you broadcasters saying, I have this IP address, who holds this IP address? Send me your physical address. So you are broadcasting to all the machines. And whoever holds this, they send there, say, I got this machine, this IP, and this here is my MAC address. Now in this process, there's no authentication, nothing. As an attacker, if I can respond faster than the actual device, that server will consider my device as the legitimate device, and it will discard the next response that they receive. So it considers the fastest response and discard everything else, because there's no authentication there. Similarly, we have similar issues here as well. They work on similar kind of pattern. We don't have capacity to have authentication in place, otherwise they'll be delayed. Messages will be delayed, we will not be reaching in time, and so on. So generally, at substation, we have three main protocols. One is called Goose, it's a generic object-oriented substation event. Second is called sampled measured value, called SMV. And third is called MMS, manufacturing message specification. So MMS follow client-server communication protocol. Now we know what is client-server. You have a client, you have a server that's running. There could be multiple clients that can connect to the server. and exchange data. Now, GOOS and SMB protocol follow publish subscriber model. As I said, there could be multiple topic that they can subscribe to, different type of data, for example. The device act as a publisher. For example, RTU, they're sensing data, and then whoever needs that data can send. So whoever needs, they need to subscribe what kind of data you need. So you're a subscriber of that type of data. We call it topic in a way. And there could be multiple subscribers, the multiple publishers, right? Who are collecting different devices, collecting data, and then sending to whoever needs it. So they follow publish subscriber model. Now we say the IEC 61850 recommends some specific security solutions for multicast messages. Should use digital signatures with RSA algorithm to verify message integrity and authentication. I think we haven't covered this stuff, but just touch it. What is a digital signature? And why do we use it? Huh? No, it is more secure. What property we can verify in a way? In what situation you will use digital signatures? Sorry? Okay, what else? Mm-hmm. Okay, so there are some basic properties in digital system in terms of cybersecurity or in general security. So we know CIA, confidentiality, integrity, availability. For confidentiality, we go for encryption. Integrity, we go for hashing or MAC. For availability, generally we look for some kind of logic put in place. There should not be DOS attack, data should be available, so you replicate data, whatever. There are two more things. One, authentication. You wanted to know, in a way, or you wanted to verify the users who are accessing system are the legitimate users. That's why we have authentication in place. And the last is, as I said, and we discussed it, repudiation. If you're sending something to someone, that person should not be denying after receiving it. Or you cannot deny that you haven't sent it. Right? So in the digital world, this should be extremely important. Like you see in WhatsApp, you send a message and you can delete it. But when you delete it, that still leave a footprint saying you created something, but now you have deleted. Maybe your recipient cannot see, your operator still see. Yeah? So we need, in a digital world, we need some proof that can allow us to say the user have seen this, somebody has created this, you can verify who has created this. Otherwise, there will be fake content, it's become much harder, impossible to detect it. So what we do generally, we have a message, we're passing to a hash function. Now we were calling it a hash code. Hash code, message digest, same thing, whatever you call it. Earlier we used to call it message digest because we were having MD5 based algorithms. So we call it message digest. Now we call it secure hash function, we call it hash code. Same thing. So you pass message to hash function, get the code, you encrypt this code. Now when you are encrypting, we are talking about public key cryptography. As we said, we got two keys, one public key, one is private key. Whenever you are encrypting at this point, what we are saying, you are signing it. If you are signing it, you are using your private key, which is known to you. That becomes digital signature. What is signature? Signing the hash code of your message. As simple as that. You're signing a hash code with your private key. That becomes your signature. So you send message along with the signature. Now when people receive it, they want to verify what is the source of this message? Who is the person who has created this? If it is coming from me, for example, you know my public key. Public keys are open to anyone. You can easily extract. Sometimes they are at some repositories and so on. So the recipient receives these two things, message and signature. What he gonna do from message? He knows this hash code. He'll pass it, get the hash code here, decrypt this signature. Since the message was encrypted using the private key, it can only be decrypted using the public key, or the other way. Yeah, if you're performing an operation with public key, you can reverse it with the private key. If you're doing this with private key, you can do this with public key, right? We'll see that what. So since it was encrypted using the private key, that can only be decrypted using the public key of that person. And public keys are known to everyone, so anyone can decrypt and get the hash code of message digest. You got message, you know the hash function, you got the code, and then you compare. Now, what properties we are achieving here? Why we are doing this logic? What's happening here? One, if this message was created by you, if I'm able to decrypt it with your public key, that signifies this message was created your private key, which is known to you only. So you are the person who has created this. So it verifies the source of this message. Second, it also helps you to detect integrity of the message. You can verify whether the message has been tampered in between or not. If it has been tampered, these will not match. If they are matching, that means message that was sent has correctly been received. Right? So that's the reason we use digital signatures to maintain these properties. What are the signing algorithms? What are the algorithms through that you can create digital signatures? Have you studied any of those? So there's one algorithm called DSS, Digital Signature Standard. Yeah, there are a number of algorithms, but the very interesting algorithm is RSA. Now, in the previous lecture, we have seen we were using RSA for encryption. Now we are talking about encryption for signature, right? So what we are saying, similar thing. You got a message passed to a hash function, sign it with your private key, send both things over the network. Your recipient will get these two things. It will verify signature, applying public key of the sender, get the hash code. You have a message passed to a hash function, and then compare it. What makes RSA special? So let's say there are two reasons why a message is hashed before signed using RSA. So what we are doing, we are hashing a message and then signing it. Why? Why can't we just sign it? What's the need of having this hash code? Why can't we just encrypt, apply signature key to the message and then send it? Why we are computing hashing over it, and then why we are signing the hash code, not the message? Because we wanted to make sure, first of all, the integrity of the message. Message has not been tampered. That's why we wanted to know the code, signing the code so that people cannot change the code. Okay, if you change the message, this will be false. Second property of hash function is for any value of your input, there's always a fixed outcome. Right? Irrespective of how long your message is, your outcome is always fixed, depending on which function you are using. If you are using SHA-1, it's a 160 bits, and so on and so forth. Yeah. So it kind of reduced the signature size. You need to sign lesser number of bits. That's why we are not signing the message. If message is your 1000 bits, your signature will still be 160. Yeah? So those are the reasons why we sign the hash, not the message. Now the question is, why RSA is special? Why we are talking about that RSA can also encrypt, but at the same time they can also be used for signatures. And RSA is the only algorithm you can do these things. There are encryption algorithms you can use for encryption, but you cannot use for signatures. There are signature algorithms. You can create signature, you can't encrypt using them. But the RSA, you can do both things. Why? That's why RSA is very, very popular. It's widely used. It was considered one of the greatest innovations in computer security when people have invented this algorithm. Why? So let's say you cannot obtain digital signature scheme by swapping the role of private and public keys of any public key cipher system. Then it also says you cannot obtain a public key cipher system by swapping the role of signature and verification keys of a digital signature scheme. And it is the same algorithm that you can use for encryption, you can use for signatures, right? So what are those properties that makes it unique? So that was a task is to identify special property RSA that allow us to be used as both encryption and a signature algorithm. In real application, you should avoid using same RSA key pair for both encryption and digital signatures. So if you need to create signature, what is the principle? You need to sign message using the private key. Yeah? And you send it over the network. Whoever holds your public key can verify your signature. Now when we talk about the other way, encryption, why do we do encryption? Because we want to send confidential information. When you are doing encryption using public key system, you are using your public key of recipient. If I need to send a message, confidential message to him, I will use his public key, which is known to everyone, to encrypt my message. Since the message was encrypted using public key, it can only be decrypted using the private key of this person, who is known to the person only. So if I can send any confidential message, that person can only decrypt it. Yeah? It will go over the network, but that's in encrypted form. Only the person who holds the private key can decrypt it. Right? So in RSA, you have one pair, one for private key, one for public key. If you are encrypting a message, again, when I say signing, we are ultimately encrypting it in RSA because the same algorithm. It's just the change is which key you are using to encrypt it. If you are using your private key to encrypt it, this will act as a signature. Yeah? Anyone who holds your public key, everybody knows, can decrypt and verify your signature. So that means in this message, there is no confidential information. Rather, I'm sending something so that people can trust this message came from me. You got a notice or letter from director office, where director signed this, you believe that this is coming from director, and these are the instructions. So you see the signature, you verify signature, or this looks from director office because it's on letterhead or whatever. In a similar way, you verify the signatures, and based on that say, oh, this person has sent this. If I want to send anything, I will create signature of it. I'll use my private key to sign it. Anyone who holds my public key can decrypt it and verify signature. So there's no confidential information, rather than information for everybody. The other way, if I need to send anything confidential, I will use the other way. I will use the public key of that person, encrypt it, send it. The person will apply its private key, decrypt it, and get the message. Yeah? Now, practically, we say whenever you are doing encryption or signatures, every time make sure you have a different pair. Don't use the same pair again and again. Otherwise, people can connect that key pair and then can crack it. It's very similar exercise, the one that we did yesterday, where you got public key, and even if you have multiple public keys, and if you're not really generating the way they should be, people can crack it. Now, it is also said the RSA algorithm that we generally study is not secure in a way. Whenever you are using RSA, make sure you are using padding. So whatever your message is, you always add some redundant, always use some padding, some bits out of it. The reason is, in worst case, even if someone can capture it, they can still recover the original message unless they know what padding you have used. Yeah? The person who is having this part will not be able to recover this correctly unless they have understanding that what is the size of padding and so on that you used. And using padding makes your message a little bit more different. If you're encrypting the same message again and again with different padding, your output will be different. So we talk about ECP mode, where you see if you're encrypting the same message again and again, you got the similar patterns. That's one of the reasons you shuffle your input, add some padding every time. Okay, we talked about this bit. So I will not go in much detail, but just give you overview. So we said why we use this. Have you studied this, Diffie-Hellman? Yes. Okay, so what is Diffie-Hellman key exchange? So these are two people, Whitfield Diffie and Martin Hellman. They again published a paper 1976, New Direction in Cryptography, where they come up with this algorithm. Now, one of the challenge at this point of time, before RSA was invented, people were mostly working on symmetric keys, cryptography. Yeah? And one of the restrictions or limitation of symmetric cryptography is you need to send the same key to the recipient. Yeah? That's the same key that you use for encryption and decryption. Now, they come up with an algorithm saying you don't really need to trouble. We have an algorithm that can help users to generate the same key at both ends without sending the actual key over the network. Because at that point of time, sending anything over the network was a big deal. There was no TLS, no transport link, no SSL, nothing. You are purely relying on encryption. You can send the encrypted packet, but how are you going to send key? There's no email, there's no text. Yeah, they're all 1980s, GSM came 1984, 3, and so on. So there was no cellular phone at this point of time. How are you going to do that? So that's where they come up saying we have an algorithm that can help you. Now, we will look very sort of quickly. The couple of parameters. One is the protocol uses multiplicative group of integers, modulo n. What does it mean? There's a group of integer numbers, 1 to infinite. Yeah? I might have an integer of, let's say, 100 numbers. Multiplicative group. What is that property? Which says if I say multiplicative group of integer modulo n. First of all, I have a group of integers. Multiplicative group means if I pick any two numbers of this group, multiply them, perform a mode over it, outcome should always be one of those numbers. Yeah? You might have additive group of integers. If I'm performing addition of any two numbers mod n, result should be one of those numbers. So as simple as that. So that's what it says. So they created a multiplicative group of integer modulo n, where n is a prime number. N must be a prime number. G should be primitive root of modulo n. So let's say if somebody gave you n, you already know n, you already know G. G is known to everybody who is part of the group, all the users. So it's between two users, Alice and Bob, and they need to generate the key. So what Alice does, Alice randomly select a large number, x. You randomly generate a number, x, need not to be prime number, and perform g to the power x mod n. Considering you know g, you know n. G is the size, n is the size of group, g is some parameter that every user in the group knows. Right? Now you can generate a random number x, you perform g to the power x, and take a mod n. Similarly, other user Bob, generate another random number, perform g to the power by mod n. Yeah? Now these are not the actual key, I'm calling it capital B, let's say this is capital A. They will exchange these numbers. So Alice will send B over the network to Alice. Alice will send capital A to Bob. Now whatever Alice receives, B, capital B, it will perform to the power x, this number that they randomly generated, mod n. Similarly, Bob receives capital A to the y, this number that Bob generated, mod n. And once you look at this, what is B? G to the power y to the power x. Similarly, the other way, what is A, which is G to the power x to the y, which is G to the power xy ideally. So G to the power xy means both parties having the same number. And that's how they can generate symmetric key at both ends without sending it. Simplistic way, this is n and g, common parameters. Alice can generate a random number, orange color. Bob generates random number, blue, whatever. They exchange and mix it, right? So they mix yellow, sorry. So yeah, so they mix this, which is A and B, capital A and B, and they exchange it. And now you selected your orange, so you mix orange with this color. You go with this blue, you mix with this one, and you see the same colors. So it's a simplistic way to understand. This is how you can generate the same number, same color, without sending that color or number over the network. Yeah, and it's just kind of mathematical representation of this with some examples how it look like. Now I'll talk one thing only before we go here. Just last slide. What is the issue here? Right. What is the issue here? The issue is there is no authentication. Anyone can send that number and get the same key at both ends. As an attacker, I can send you something pretending somebody else because there is no authentication, and end up with having some symmetric key with that, So you can break this. So for example, in this case, Alice and Bob. Now Alice performs G to the power x, need to send it to the Bob. So Alice send it. However, there is a man in the middle attack. There is an attacker that captures this, create its own number, G to the power z, pick a random number z and perform G to the z. Rather than sending G to the power x, you send this. Right. Similarly, Bob compute G to the power y, sending it to the Alice, but then there is somebody in between, doesn't send this to Bob. So what will happen? They will end up with having a key Z to the power x z. They were having a key called Z to the power zy. So there are two connections, one between this and this, one between this and this. But Alice and Bob has no idea. There's someone in between that has two connections. Whatever you will send with this key, this person can decrypt because there's no authentication in that. So definitely we need to solve authentication problem, but otherwise this is excellent way of generating the same key. So we'll stop here and we'll come back at 2:30 for the lab. Thank you.